Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you once again for joining me for this Tuesday's ACT Virtual User Groups, our free webinars and online training. Today is October 10th, 2017, and today's topic is going to be about the contact list view and some of the operations you can do from this list view right here, and actually kind of how it propagates out to some of the other list views that we have within ACT as well. As always, I'm working on the ACT 2017 demo database. Your version of ACT, your installation, if you use the default installation settings, does have this demo database on your computer. If you go to File and Open Database, you may find it there. And all right, so let's get started and talk a little bit about the contact list view. So this is something that no doubt you've seen many times in ACT. It's a very common screen. Anytime that you do any sort of lookup, for example, typing in any type of field lookup in the left sidebar here, or a lookup from the drop down, or even simply viewing all contacts, you're going to see the list view, which is juxtaposed against the contact detail view, which is what you see if you double click on a contact, and you'll see all of their details, field information. The list view shows you everybody in your current lookup. Easy stuff. So other things that we can do from this list view, though, there are some features along the top here on this toolbar here that some people may or may not have ever taken the time to explore, as well as some other options that you can do along some settings that you'll find within here and in this options menu. So probably the first thing that you'll want to do right off the bat when looking at your contact list view is change the columns that are shown along the top here. Right now I have columns for company, contacts, phone, title, etc. And if the default ones that come with ACT, I believe it has a title and phone extension in there, address 1 and address 2. They may or may not be things that you're interested in seeing, or there might be something else that's being left off of there, like ID status or email address. So if you want to change which columns are being shown along the top here, that's up in this menu option under Options and Customize Columns. Customize Columns will make this panel appear here. It shows you on the left sidebar all of the available fields in your database that are not being displayed right now. And on the right side, it shows you the columns that are being displayed along your list view lookup. And if I wanted to find, for example, email address and have this displayed here, I can find it within the left side list. Here it is. And I can use the single arrow to move it over to the other side. And there it is down there on the end. Be cautious when using your single arrows and double arrows. The single arrow will move one item at a time. The double arrow will move all items from one side to the other. But if I add email onto the end, then sure enough, there's email. Again, wonderful stuff you can do with the customized columns list. And the reason that I'm pointing this out is because it will lend us into our next section, which will be replacing fields. Probably one of the most useful tactics that you can get out of today's session. But before we get to it, just a few other notes on the customizing columns. All of the columns that you see along here are sortable. You can simply click on the column header and it will sort that column alphabetically, or you can click on it a second time to sort it reverse alphabetically. Oh, excellent question. Do you have to preserve column changes by hitting save? You do not. Simply by pressing OK will save them. Well, I suppose in some ways that is like pressing save. If you press cancel, it would not save your changes. But once you change your column settings, you're only changing them on your computer. They are not a global setting. They will not update or affect anybody else's, which is a good thing. You can feel free to set these columns as you see fit, even if you are in a larger organization. And they will stay the same until the next time you change them again. It's not something that you have to edit every single time. It will be these columns. If I close down ACT and reboot my computer, they will be what are shown until the next time I manually go in and change them again. Maybe I want to add ID status over there. And then also emails all the way, the columns I just added, like email and soon to be ID status are all the way here on the very end. I can reorganize these by using this move up and move down arrow. So on this right side, all of these columns are shown in the order that they'll be displayed. So if I want an email, maybe shift it over here next to a phone number, I can say move up and put it right about there between extension and title. And there it goes. The reason that you'll want your columns displayed here is not only so that you can view things at a glance. If you export your list to Excel, there is a very handy dandy export to Excel button right here. It will take your current lookup of just the contacts that you have visible and just the columns that you have visible and drop them into Excel with the push of a button. And there it is. It opens up Excel, and there's my worksheet. So a lot of people prefer to, if you're going to print a list out of ACT, I kind of recommend that you drop it into Excel first. I'm personally more comfortable working with Excel. Well, I'm kind of comfortable working with ACT too, but most people are often more comfortable working with Excel. And it kind of gives me a bit more control over how things will display in terms of print layouts and things as well. If you don't want anybody to take a contact list out of ACT, you can disable this exporting list to Excel option as well. For those of you that might have an employee that you're concerned could export the contacts away to Excel and walk away, you can disable this option. Okay, so now I'm ready to show you the replace field option. And this is something that's extremely useful, extremely dangerous. A great tool in the right hands and a dangerous tool in the wrong ones. Replace field is up here in the edit menu. It's a edit and replace field. And what this will do is take your entire contact lookup here of only the contacts that are visible in your list view, and you can replace the contents of one field with any value you specify. So if I wanted to completely blank out all of the zip codes or something, I'm gonna try to think of an example that might actually be useful. If I wanted to set everybody in this view, I'll set up their ID status, and I want to set them all to be one specific value. Then I can say replace the contents of ID status with the value, and then whatever I pick out of here, it's going to overwrite all the data at once. So maybe you wanted to clean up your list and you did some manual operations on here to get this the way that you wanted. And they can say replace the contents with customer. And sure enough, if I do this, keep your eyes on this column right here and say, okay, it's going to warn me that this is going to modify all records in the lookup. Boom. And now they're all overwritten. There's a lot of situations where you might want to use this. Maybe I've added a brand new field to the database and I want to make sure that they all have a certain value. Like an example that I was just helping somebody with the other day was they wanted to add a Christmas card field where they might be sending out Christmas cards to somebody. So we added a checkbox to their contact layout, but now they wanted to have that box checked off for hundreds of people and they didn't want to take the time to do it. So they did a lookup first where they said, show me my lookup ID status for all of my ID statuses are customers, and they got their list and they said, okay. And then they went to edit, replace field. They said, replace the contents of the checkbox. So it was a Christmas card checkbox with the value of checked. If you choose a checkbox field, it will show a little checkbox. So you can say replace it with check. And then sure enough, it modified them all. This can be a way to overwrite data. You could just as easily say replace field and leave this blank, and it would blank it all out for all of these people, or set it to one thing or another. Other things you can do with this list view, hindsight, maybe I should have done this switch this order up. You can manually select and omit people out of the list. So you may know that if you're ever doing a lookup in your list view, I can say look up state, for example. You can look up any field based on an operator. So in this example, I'll say look up a state starts with New York, and I have this list. But for whatever purpose I'm doing here, maybe I'm going to send this to Excel, or I'm going to do a replace fields operation. I say that I don't want my record included in there. So how can I remove just myself out of this list? There's the omit selected button. And if you omit, then sure enough, it just manually removes the currently selected line. Oh, I'm being informed that audio is dropping from time to time. I'll switch off of my Wi-Fi and move over to my cell data. I hope that that improves the audio quality. I apologize about that. Using the omit selected, you can individually take somebody's name and omit them out of the list. And similarly, if I do lookup selected, it does the opposite of omit selected. It's a lookup selected is going to omit everything else and look up just whatever is currently selected. So you can use, if you wanted to do a shift, the shift key will select multiple contacts at once. This is kind of like a Windows trick. It's a normal file operation. If you select one thing in a list and then hold shift, while holding shift, click something else, it will highlight everything in the middle. And if I were to do lookup selected, then it will only look up the ones that I had just selected there. Similarly to shift, instead of holding shift, you can hold down control. And rather than selecting everything in between, you can select multiple items at once. Whereas normally as you move around, it's only going to select one at a time. If I do control, I can go through the list and search multiple. And then maybe when I've got the ones selected that I want to work with, I can omit them or similarly look them up. If you're not a fan of holding down control while you select these items, if you're going to be working with your list data in this way, there's also tag mode, which is essentially the same thing. It's holding down control for you. Tag mode is this checkbox right up here on top. If you have tag mode selected, right now I do not have any keyboard keys pressed. It's kind of like the system is just pressing down control for me so that I can individually tag and choose people as I go along. And then I can, again, do my lookup or omit selected option. Following from tag mode is a simple tag all or untag all button where I can select everybody at once or untag them. When I have multiple contacts selected, it's not just the lookup and omit operations that I can do, or even my replace field operations. What I can also do is right click. And if you right click on here, there are some other things that you can do. For example, schedule activities in bulk with your list. You can schedule a call. This could be one call that's scheduled with all of these people, or I could say create separate activity for each contact, and it would schedule an individual one on my calendar for every one of these contacts. Or I could, there's other operations we can do from here. Maybe I want to add this list to a group. Just as a static group, I can add these contacts to a group. Using contact access, I can make them all private or public based on narrowing down the list first and then performing some operations. Next, there's also an edit mode that you can do from these list views. If I go into edit mode, while this option is enabled, it means that rather than clicking around and highlighting the entire row, oh, misclick there, it will actually give me the option to edit the data directly. So you might see now as I'm in edit mode, this checkbox selected here, as I click around, rather than selecting the contact row, I've actually got a cursor where I can directly type data in. So that if I want to work at data cleanup, as is necessary from time to time, I can go down the list and just work with the data right from here, as opposed to going in and out and going into detail view for every single one of these contacts, making changes, and then navigating through. Sometimes it's easier from the list view to do edit mode. And this will let you type in data directly into the field right from the list view. Other than the replace field and the edit options up here, there's also swap field and copy field that can be useful. Maybe if you added an ID status to or an email to or something, and you didn't want to just make a blanket replace field option to everybody, to overwrite the existing contents of a field with something else, you can do swap field, which does exactly what it sounds like. I can take the contents of one field and switch it with another. So if I wanted to switch around their home address with the contents of their main address, I can do this. And sure enough, it would flip-flop them both for me. There's also copy field. So if I wanted to copy the contents of one field to another, this is different than the blanket overwrite that you might see if you did the replace field, of course. You can take the contents of one field and copy it to the other. Other options that we have up here in the toolbar, there's a print current screen option. I did address this earlier. You can print directly from Mac right here with your quick print options. A lot of people do this. A lot of people like to print right from Mac. Personally, I just like Excel because I know how to control all the font sizes and fine tuning a little bit better with Excel, but you can print directly from Mac right here. There's a duplicate contacts shortcut. Similar to how you can go up into the contacts menu and say duplicate contacts from up here. You can write them a letter, attach a document. Display map is going to take the current contact that you have selected and display that contact on a map just for that individual contact there. This is the demo database, so I'm not surprised that this address doesn't seem to exist, Lone Tree, Iowa. So Google Maps is coming up with nothing here besides my hometown, Baldwinsville here. Customize columns shortcut. Just another way to reach into that other menu. And yeah, that just about wraps us up for here. A lot of the lessons that we took from this list view operations are visible elsewhere in ACT. For example, if I'm in the Notes tab or the History tab, then we have similar columns that we can sort on, or we can go to an Options and Customize Columns panel over here. They carry the same theme throughout. You'll also see some of the same lessons over here in the task list. We have an Export List to Excel option, and we have over here in the options, we have a Customize Columns ability. If you're working with companies, it's about time that I start to have a company seminar coming up again soon. That comes into the rotation every once in a while. We do have the same edit and replace field and swap field and copy field options as well for companies. Companies also has its own edit mode. Same thing goes for groups as well. If I'm in groups, this is my groups detail view, or I can move to the groups list view. And you guessed it, same kind of deal, where I can replace certain fields in bulk and opportunities. All right, thank you everybody for joining excuse me, joining with me today. I was reading the comment about the audio dropping from time to time. I'm sorry if there was any audio troubles. I'll listen to the recording right now and see if there's anything I can do to diagnose that for next week. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'd be delighted if you'd like to join us live. Please see the description below the video for the connection URL. It's the same connection URL each and every week. We hold these meetings at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, so I'd be very happy if you'd like to join in. You can always send me an email, steven@12free.com, or call me at 716-803-6976 if you'd have any questions or like to hire me for any work. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you again in 1 week. Goodbye.